Hey guys, Lisa Figueroa, board certified criminal defense attorney in Orlando. I'm coming back following up on the Alicia Andrews trial. We recently gave you a video telling you my thoughts on the verdict. However, I saw a lot of people, a lot of chatter online talking about whether or not it was a mistake to put Alicia Andrews on the stand and whether or not that's why she was found guilty. So I think that's a great question because it's always something that the defense attorney always has to consider whether or not you put your client on the stand or not. And it was a big deal for them to put her on the stand. There are a lot of different pros and cons to putting your client on the stand. In this case, if you don't put your client on the stand, the juries always want to know, did she do it? You know, what's her side of the story? But we did hear from her by her statement to the police. And so I think it was a really bold move by the defense to put her on the stand and give her a chance to tell her story. The con or the negative side of that is you never know what's going to happen. The prosecutor gets to ask as many questions as they want, and they did. They came at her so strongly and they kept on and on and on to the point where she was getting irritated and she was kind of getting aggravated. Like she even said she was aggravated with the police when they kept questioning her, but now with the prosecutor on the stand, even though she tried to keep her poise, the prosecutor just kept pushing her, and that is a danger. On the other hand, it's fantastic that she got up there and was willing, because then as a defense attorney, I'm like, she didn't have to take the stand, but she got up there even though the prosecutor was going to come at her. And I think that bought her some points with the jury because she was brave enough to take the stand. On the other hand, it could have turned them off by her reactions or the way she talked, the way her mannerisms, all of that could have hurt her. The problem is you never know. A defense attorney can always second guess. You can think that because she took the stand, she was found guilty. On the other hand, she could have been found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder, and then you're thinking, I should have put her on the stand. So hindsight's 2020. We'll never know really what impacted the jurors' minds or thoughts, but it was a bold move, and it's something that at the end of the day, the defendant is the one that has to decide whether they take the stand or not. The judge always asks whether or not they want to, and the attorney can only tell them the pros and cons, but it's ultimately her decision, and she chose to do it, and depending on which side you're on, it may have just paid off. So there's a lot of strategy that you have to take into account when you put the client on the stand. So you saw how she was dressed. She was very professional, the way she was poised. All of that's important because the juror is trying to make up their mind as to her credibility. And a lot of that, people read between the lines. They look at your demeanor, they look at your gestures, they look at what you're wearing, how you stand, how you sit, all of that. And so she was dressed perfectly, right? On the other hand, the prosecution made a big deal about her videos, about how she talked on her text, pictures of her with the red hair, which was a totally different look than how she presented on the stand. And so they tried to make a big deal of that it's just a show, that this is just her pretending to be this way. But on the other hand, she got points for the fact that she is young. She's the smaller, youngest, the only female in this group. And so those are just some of the factors that the defense attorney has to weigh and the jury has to weigh when they're trying to decide whether or not to believe her when she takes the stand. Being a trial attorney for over 20 years, I prefer always to be able to put my client on the stand, but there's a lot of risk involved in that. I always tell them it's their decision. Ideally, if they gave a statement to the police, if the police bothered to take their statement and their side of the story comes in without me having to put my client on the stand, then we don't need to put them on the stand, because at the end of the day, if I put my client on the stand, the prosecution is going to say, and there's one of the rules that the judge tells the jury is, does the witness have any interest in how the case is going to be decided? And then they're always like, well, the defendant has the most interest in how the case will be decided, to downplay what they're saying as if they're lying because they're the ones who are most interested. And then they'll also say, usually by the time we're at trial, it's been a year, it's been a lot of time. And they're like, oh, they've had a lot of time to think of what they're going to say. So really the rules are that it doesn't matter what they say or how eloquent they are, because it's normal that people are going to be nervous when they take the stand. And so when you're nervous and they think you're guilty, and the rules are set up in a courtroom that it's not the defense's burden. The defendant shouldn't have to take the stand. The state has to prove their case and the evidence by what they put on, not about whether or not the defendant is like a great speaker in public when your life is on the line. Those are the things that matter. And at the end of the day, the state has to prove the case, not the defense. So those are my thoughts on Alicia Andrews taking the stand. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll be back with some more. Take care.